Well, hello, folks. Nice to see you again. Uh, I'm off to work at the theater here to do some rehearsal after lunch. But before that, this morning I came across an article in my Medium notifications called Capitalism and Extinction by Eric Michaels. I have referred to some of his work in the past in these videos. So, I like him. He's like me. We're not experts, but we've been following the climate thing for a while. For me, in particular, since around 2009, really on my radar. But I remember Carl Sagan back in the day, and I remember Small is Beautiful and Silent Spring. And I remember this funny song we used to sing when we were hiking. Pollution, pollution. There's smog, there's sewage, there's waste. Turn on the tap and get hot and cold running crap. If you live in American City, you will find it very pretty. Just remember, there's one concern. I can't remember the whole song. Anyway, it was fun. And that was a long time ago. I was just a youngin' when we used to sing that. So back in the day, back in the 1960s, but then you can go back further, on Golden Pond or whatever, Wordsworth, or what am I trying to think of? Anyway, uh, you can go back to the 19th century and find tree huggers. And you can go back to the ancient times and find tree huggers. And of course, many indigenous cultures, as we find out and know when we look into it, cared about watersheds. They didn't call it watersheds. They cared about, natural systems within which they lived and upon which they depended on for their survival and all that kind of stuff. So there's something I'm chomping at the bit before I get into this capitalism and extinction thing. There's a new thing I read from Eric Lee that he just put up about his becoming the dictator, the eco-fascist. He didn't say that, but, the eco-fascist dictator to give us a soft landing instead of a complete crash and collapse, calamitous, painful, horrific collapse. The depop, when we finally die off, as it were. And of course, a lot of people think that this is imminent or perhaps coming along down the pike a bit. But one thing I'm certain about, we're all accelerationists just by virtue of being alive today, in the sense that we're all servants of the great game, plebs and proles within the great game. We're consumers, but it's not our fault. I've been taught and advertised to ad nauseum to eat snacks and sugary foods and drink tons of beer and take pills and whatnot. I get my metabolic syndrome. You point your finger right at me and tell me it's my fault because I'm not strong enough, smart enough, disciplined enough, self-disciplined enough to be a healthy man, to go to the CrossFit, to listen to Atia podcast all the time and learn how to extend my life and do zazen and treat my body like a temple. It's all my fault. So, so Capitalism Extinction, he talks a little bit about this type of thing. And, you can't blame capitalism. So it just triggered me because I'm frustrated. I like Eric's work, but I'm frustrated. And I don't see where I can plug into the battle to create the soft landing that Eric Lee is talking about to invent and develop an alternative and make it happen by taking power away from the oligarchs, from the players of the great game. So, yeah, they're my enemy. They just are naturally my enemy. And of course, they are what they are. They do what they do. Don't blame the player, blame the game, type of thing. But in actuality, many of them know what's going on and they hide it. What did the oil companies know and when did they know it? Type of thing. Look, I'm earning money for my shareholders, so shut the fuck up already and buy some stocks and bonds. Get your portfolio going. If you're young, start investing now. So anyway, some of us think that this particular way of doing things is coming to a rapid end because we're all accelerationists. If you're not an anarcho-capitalist, if you're not Mark Fisher or whatever, we're not doing anything to mitigate the externalities of global financialized capitalism. And, you point your fingers. What this guy was saying, the other Eric Michaels, is that, there are all kinds of causes. We're all part and parcel of it. So you can't just blame one thing. I don't think anybody with brain who has been paying attention for the last 30 years or 10 years blames the predicament, the polycrisis, call it what you will, on one thing. But in my view, capitalism is an accelerant towards extinction. And so I wrote a piece about that, and I published it at Substack Cospelon, at Medium Stephen Cleghorn, and on my blog at cospelon.eu. Everybody wants to be the dictator with all the answers. We all compete for attention. And people are very jealous of their content, their space, their viewership, readership. And so we don't talk to one another. We don't call each other up on the VoIP and have a chat because nobody has time to do that when we're creating all this content, which is sad for me. I'd rather, just like in the old days, you meet a guy on a blog and you say, hey, let's talk. And then you get together and you talk, or you call each other up and you talk. And nowadays, of course, we send WhatsApp messages to one another instead of calling each other on the phone and talking. So it's kind of sad. I know we don't have time to talk to everybody, but some people sincerely want to engage and just say hello. It could be like a 2-minute conversation. You're kind of interesting. I appreciate you. What's up? How's your life? What do you do on your day off? Something like that. Do you drink wine? But we can't do that. We have to have the conversation with important people so that we can grow our viewership or readership or whatever ship. So if you're not getting a lot of clicks and likes, I don't want to talk to you. Doesn't benefit me. Qui bono. So this is the way it is these days, and that's that. I have to grow up, be a mature old man, and deal with it. So anyway, but my frustration leads me to write something, and I'm not saying I'm good at this, okay? So please don't confuse my talking about my work as if I'm that important or, yeah, you have to play the game. I've never spent money on boosting a post or anything like that. I don't play the algorithms. I don't do enough hashtagging and SEO and whatnot. I guess I just don't care. But, still, I'm engaged. I'm reading stuff, and it's fun for me. And then a lot of times when I write something, I'm just working it out in my own mind, trying to understand things better by articulating it myself, which is what we do when we educate ourselves. They say that you have to be able to explain it to a 10th grader and then you know what evolution really is or whatever, something like that. So yeah, I do that. Otherwise, the information just goes in one brain cell and out the other synapse, and I lose it all. And as I've said before, I'm interested in the great game and our cultural evolution, and so I do this, you know. So in this piece, I say, don't blame capitalism. Ain't no money in it. Worse yet, talk about the big C, and you'll only get attention from a tiny population of far lefties and anti-Gandhi revolutionaries. There's no money in that either. Only pain before the die-off, not cool. So the idea is, there's going to be this die-off. We're just going to have to grin and bear it. Everybody talks about a soft landing. A lot of people do, not just one or two, but a lot. I've read a lot of their work. And I just don't see anybody working towards it. In particular, I don't see lots and lots of people, a critical mass around the world, pushing back against the neocons and neoliberals and doing something. I mean, you can have your left or right or whatever, what publication is left or right. Who cares, subscribe to your thing on the internet that tells you their biases. I mean, who cares? The game is the game. Everybody's in it, whether we like it or not, and nobody's really pushing back. So if you have your gray zone or your great simplification or whatever it is, that's great. Get your education, but we're not organizing, we're not fighting, we're not pushing back. Where are the Black Panthers? I do not condone violence of any sort. I am not fomenting revolution. I wouldn't do something like that. Live long and prosper. Peace. The Beatitudes. Let me meditate. Okay, I'm better now. Yeah, I don't see any pushback, really. I mean, what I see is what I've seen for decades, which is they go in, they kill and bomb and do their regime change stuff, and their proxy wars in Central America, Iran, Contra, Vietnam, whatever. Throw a dart at a timeline, pick a place, and take a look. And they try to swoop in and control the narrative, the destiny of the nation state, so that they can control the resources. And then you have failed state after failed state after failed state. And we have failing states in the West now. Look at Germany. I mean, it's not just in the South or the developing nations of the world. You can't say the third world anymore. I didn't just say that. So, yeah, it's failing, and we don't notice, we don't care, because we have strawberries for Christmas, and we have streaming services. We're entertained, and we're well fed, and we have our addictions to feed and whatnot. And so we don't pay attention, we don't notice, and we don't organize, we don't talk, we don't call each other up, we don't have meetings. You just wonder, like back in the 20s or the 19th century or the 1930s, people marching in the streets and so on and so forth. Labor movements and communists and fascists and people getting together and having these rallies, not like these dumbed down microplastic, forever chemical, brain, destroyed, gatherings at a Trump rally. I mean, we are so dumbed down. The idiocracy is just what it is, and it's everywhere. It is what it is now. The thing is the idiocracy. And so we think that we're doing something when we go to a Trump rally or whatever. Black Lives Matter. It doesn't really, just pick one. And in reality, there's just no passion for it. There's no real desire to do those kinds of things anymore. And we wouldn't know how to do it. I mean, there are writers, authors, think tanks, scientists, social scientists who study and expound upon, social movements, community organizing, this, that, and the other thing, Extinction Rebellion type stuff, whatever. And some of them are pretty good and they're pretty systematic. And they could provide a good template for community organizing and whatnot. But nobody's really engaged in it. And plus we have to pay the rent and all that kind of stuff. So, how much time do we really have? And I keep harping on this. Would we give up an hour a week of screen time to do something? And I just don't see it. So I beg people like Eric Lee and Eric Michaels to point me towards these groups. And I'm not talking about Zeitgeist, the movement, These can be fun for young people to get together or DM25, Varoufakis, or, auditing certain cool Balkan state philosophers.
Now you're speaking my language. I just finished writing a book called Violence. It's a joke, of course, because it's about films that don't show violence. I had this quote in mind: you are never closer to God than when you kill. At the same time, the more you are close to death, the more you remain blind to it. There is no experience of death, isn't it? Where you are so close to death that you have an experience, not in an elementary sense, but something like an insight into its irrationality, into the fact that there is no redemption in it, and so on.
You must have been aware of the fact that death is a very profound question. One that has obsessed me for much of my life. Whenever I make a film, a deep and intense relationship with death surrounds me and opens a door to wondering what really is behind the door. That is, what lies beyond. I felt it even more profoundly when I was sick and in the hospital, going in and out of life, teetering on the edge of death. That has something to do with this film. Of course, yes, I would say that death is the greatest question. It's something I've thought about profoundly.
Very sexy lisps. Anyway, guess who that is? So, yeah, I'm just wondering, what team to join to fight, how to contribute to groups that are fighting back, really, really fighting back. So I don't know, maybe it's my fault. I'm stuck in a bubble of information and I'm just not seeing it. And I need to refine my searches and whatnot to get hooked up with the revolutionaries. And, it's a tough thing. It really is. You get abused to the point where you can't take it anymore. And your dignity is so assaulted and so abused that you say, it doesn't matter if I live or die anymore. I'm not going to take it anymore. And then you fight back. Look at El Salvador, Guatemala, Nicaragua. These are prime examples. But you can also look at Gaza, the West Bank, other places. And, you can't even talk about these things anymore. If you do, you are completely destroyed and canceled and vilified. If you care about carpet bombing residential areas. I think it's like, you're watching Dresden on your smartphone. I remember reading a book once, and there was a description of, the asphalt being oil-based. When the firebombs hit it, these streets just turn into flames. So you have these human candles everywhere burning up as they get firebombed. And the idea, Curtis LeMay or whatever, is that you're going to disabuse people of wanting to fight the war if you torture them enough. You take them to a black site and waterboard them, and they're going to tell you the truth, type of thing. It doesn't work. It's debunked. The science proves it's wrong, but it doesn't matter. We keep doing it. So somehow, if we bomb this, that, or the other place into oblivion, it quells the desire for humiliated and abused people to fight back. But it doesn't. So in the West, I guess we're going to have to wait until we're so abused and so beaten and so completely wrecked and humiliated that we want to fight back. And then something will happen. God knows what. But wouldn't it be nice if we organized and thought things through first, so it didn't have to be so nasty, ugly, violent, disruptive, destructive? And we don't do that. So we're just sitting around waiting for things to get really dark. And in the meantime, it's so entertaining to watch people talk about Democrats and Republicans and whatever. It's so silly. And it's the same conversation, no matter who's talking, that's been going on for decades. You can go back to the 50s and just see these things rehashing themselves over and over and over again. Different voices having the same conversations. Of course, new terminology comes up, like ecolate or LGBTQ and woke, or whatever you want to talk about. And then that's exciting. We have a new term for something. Oh boy. And then people get focused on that shiny new thing. And we're so excited by it. And then we have the conversation about that thing. And in the meantime, we just accelerate down this path of the predicament, the polycrisis, caused by what? Overshoot and all that kind of stuff. So we refer back to books that were written in the 60s and 70s and 80s, and we say, see, I told you so. These people knew what they were talking about. We didn't listen. And so now we get the Cassandra complex, and nobody's listening to me. And so then it just cycles through again and again and again. I can see this just continuing for another 10 years. And things aren't getting better, unfortunately. The last 10 years are very vivid in my mind, right, in terms of these things. And that went by in a heartbeat. Of course, I'm older, so time flies when you're older. But that went by in a heartbeat. So this decade's going by in a heartbeat. And it's just heading in one direction. More war, more ecological destruction, the oceans getting more screwed over, the world heating up, greater inequality. The oligarchs are in the White House running the show now, right in your face. And the super fans of Elon Musk are all excited about it. And, the anarcho-capitalists and Peter Thiel and we don't even whisper anymore. There's no smoke-filled rooms, people. There's nobody hiding in the shadows having their little meetings. The Davos crowd. What was that place in Northern California, Nixon and all those guys used to go to? It was a club in San Francisco. It slips my mind at the moment. But anyway, these cabals, these conspirators, the robber barons, having to borrow money. J.P. Morgan trying to get the money from the European investors to build the railroads and colonialism and destruction of the native population and whatnot. You go on and on and on. It happens over and over and over again. History rhymes and rhymes and rhymes. And so we just hang in there with it. And that's what's frustrating me, because I tried to educate myself on what's going on. And maybe I did a half-assed job of it so far, a little bit. I've learned a thing or two, maybe a little bit. But it's all leading to the same outcomes. So knowing about it is no reason to signal my virtue. Yeah, you know what the problem is. Great, thanks. What do we do about it? Kind of thing. So I'm frustrated, and I don't want Eric Lee, who doesn't give a flying fuck about me, or Eric Michaels, who doesn't give a flying fuck about me, to think I'm being mean if I beg to ask a question or two or differ in some way. Or for you, that matter, the three of you watching this right now. I'm not trying to be a jerk. My irony, it's not Hegelian, my irony or sarcasm or sardonic nature is not meant to be violent or mean. Well, it's just the only way I can express my frustration. And I think that's pretty common feeling for people in the Anglosphere in particular. I wouldn't say my Chinese friends or my Japanese or Korean friends or Thai friends would avail themselves of such humor. But, what can I say? I grew up in Ireland, the United States of new miracles, and so it's there. It's in me. I can't help it. So forgive me for that. But anyway, if anyone out there has ideas or can point me to the groups in the West, in the wealthy West, in Denmark and Sweden and Germany. Oh no, don't talk about that. Poland, Eastern Europe, I don't care where. Canada, New Zealand, that are actively organizing to take power away from the players of the great game and do something different. So number one, you have to have an idea what you're going to do that's different. So I love that Eric Lee piece that I'll write about and talk about next time, where he's got some ideas about that, as he wants to be the dictator of, the world so he can fix things. And that's always a fun thought experiment. If you haven't done it, do it now. After this video, do it. Think about what you would do as the dictator. So he has some great ideas there. Show me some people who have a platform like DM25 or whatever and are doing something to fight back. And let's see if they're effective at it, if they're actually gaining traction. Varoufakis and his thing, which is pretty standard manila envelope political stuff, left-leaning, the left is right. It's right. But his thing isn't getting much traction in the elections here. The Green thing isn't going anywhere. The Labor Party, it's dead. None of this stuff is going anywhere. Whatever you point to, I mean, those are kind of boring examples, but is there something else out there, that is meaningful and looks like it could gain traction? And would people actually sacrifice a minute of their day working on it? And, I realized that there weren't that many Simone Weils in history. There just aren't ever that many people who step up heroically and put their lives on the line for an ideal or an ideology or some quest or cause. And so these leaders are rare and beautiful, but few and far between. And it takes a disaster to get people to follow them in the first place, you know. I mean, the Raj, the jewel in the crown. And then suddenly you've got Gandhi coming back from South Africa, a lawyer, wandering around doing stuff, spinning fabric and talking this, that, and the other thing. And, you know, suddenly a Malcolm X or a Martin Luther King pops up well after slavery, you know, after poor old Abraham Lincoln's been assassinated. And, you know, you have the civil rights thing going on in the 60s and the 50s. You know, it took a while. Jim Crow, you know, it had its footprint. It was a thing, you know, Ku Klux Klan in the 20s and 30s, you know. But anyhow, so that's a thing. It took a while, popped up. There was some progress. And then, you know, you keep sliding back, and inching forward, sliding back. And then you have to define progress. You know, is it all, in my piece, I talk about Steven Pinker progress, you know, which is one thing. And then you have to define capitalism for yourself. You know, what is it? And so much has been written about it, you know. And Pinker-esque apologetics is nothing but a teleological apologetics for capitalism. You know, it's bad. It needs to be regulated. It needs to be controlled. But, you know, it's progress. And progress today equals a kind of a path towards human extinction. I mean, right now we're just extincting other species of fauna and flora, but not ours. We're good. You know, we'll get a replicator machine. We'll be eating cheeseburgers on that starship in no time. You know, you listen to the BS coming from people like Musk, and it's just mind-boggling that anybody believes it. I mean, you really have to be an engineer or a physicist to even understand that he's full of shit. But most people just aren't. So you define capitalism, so much has been written, and, you know, fungible. And you go off and try to figure these things out and then put it in context and say, well, you know, I put in my piece, who pumps and dumps if not the real capitalists, the players of the Great Game 2.0, reality TV show streaming on your favorite platform soon. Don't miss the new episode of The Real Capitalists. So some of my friends love to call themselves capitalists, and they don't have stocks and bonds, and they don't actually play the game. They're not hedge fund managers, you know. They're not CEOs, whatever. I mean, there are players who move markets, who make markets and move markets, and then there are other people who just kind of slide on the coattails and make a decent living, which is good. But anyhow, so we have the resource balanced economy, all these kinds of things, and other people talking about different ways to manage the economy and whatnot. And that's all good. These ideas are cool. And if there's something viable out there that we could fight for, and if there were some ways in which we could fight that wouldn't just be horrific and devastating and nasty, then I want to join that fight. So thanks for listening. Oh my God, 33 minutes. Sorry about that. Take good care. Please like and share. Subscribe. Do something. You know, I'd like to have a dialogue with somebody. But anyway, yeah. Take good care. Bulliam T out.